다들 ngaran sogi changye joja data Rinpoche gi kalop khari sung shapati yang jar chik samlo ta gi tuze chire.
So now during this period what we'll do is we'll review and contemplate the advice and teachings that Rinpoche gave us in the morning.
Chidang ngaran so lobjong jewi kapso ani twebe shirap sambe shirap kombe shirap sanada shirap number sum tobe gi chidu lobjong chigire.
Generally speaking, when we receive teachings, when we study, we're studying in order to develop and cultivate the three types of wisdom, or we could say insight, prajna, the wisdom of hearing, the wisdom of study, it's better, the wisdom of study, the wisdom of contemplation, and the wisdom of meditation.
Tene tobe shirap gi chidang mashe banam shebar chigirala.
The wisdom of study, what's that about? What's it for? It's to help us come to know things that we don't yet know.
Tene ngaran so samjung gi sherap ti tene takje tangne khari sheba den so yangja chi ta ngishe yang da ba thwe la ani ken chi ra.
The wisdom of contemplation, what's that for? That's for beginning to internalize what we've come to know intellectually through study. So we mull that over in our minds, we turn it over, reflect and examine what we've learned through study.
Tene komjungi sherap degi ta so samjungi tenla baba tegarang la ta nyamne nane ta thengwe so ra thwe to ba chigera.
Then with the wisdom of meditation, what we're doing is we are practicing or applying what we've resolved through the wisdom of contemplation. Better? So with the wisdom of meditation, we're applying or putting into practice what we've resolved and ascertained through the wisdom of contemplation.
Tene tobe shirap gi tsigi dodo chigire, samjungi shirap degi twengi dodo chigire, komjungi shirap degi tsigdo niga gita dodo chune tarchiba chigire.
The wisdom of study analyzes the words. The wisdom of contemplation analyzes the meaning of those words. The wisdom of meditation analyzes both words and meaning and ascertains the ultimate intent of those words and meaning.
Ta tirin rinpoche ge zo dengaran zo tembalame ani kyobalame tembalame sen konjo rinpoche na basum kola sung shapare.
Today Rinpoche was primarily speaking about the unsurpassable teacher, unsurpassable Dharma. So the unsurpassable teacher, the precious Buddha, and the unsurpassable protector, the precious Dharma. And just, this is a note from me as the translator. Rinpoche was using lines from a very common prayer, which is on page 36 of the Rangjung Yeshe chant book. So just if you want to know.
Di tombat lana meba shebatela ta tonda nido sangda namjuina kembe ki ta chi sheja tham je khongdu chuba ani shendön la ani tu ningje cheme badan dembate ta tomba ye kejure do.
When we talk about the precious Buddha, teacher most supreme, so I'm translating that same line and phrase, but as it's done in the Rangjung Yeshe chant book. So when we talk about the precious Buddha, teacher most supreme, we can describe that teacher, that Buddha, in terms of two main qualities, wisdom and compassion. So the wisdom that knows directly the nature of all things without exception, and the limitless compassion, the boundless compassion and love that acts for the benefit of others. These two things, wisdom and compassion.
아니 덤바 람메 되기 아니 람 덤바낭니 라나메 바레마도 아니 응외수 동알 껴발라 라나메 바시 마레스 송소아.
When we describe the teacher as most supreme or unsurpassable, this is said with regards to his teachings, the fact that he teaches or shows us the path to liberation. We're not saying that he is actually able to deliver us into a state of liberation himself. He's supreme because he can show us the path that we can then traverse.
Tini Chokyi lana mebadi tumo maibadi tini tambechuri sungsoha.
So, yeah, it's not that the Buddha can himself offer us protection, but rather he can show us the path that we can follow. What is the supreme protection then? The supreme protector? It's the Dharma, Buddha's teachings.
Yang ngarazo joba ngomadi chue chayindi dindegi chue di sui dambare sidega tene damba sanji ki damba indi te kong kadin cheshu ji chategures.
And the teachings that Buddha gave, they are the supreme protection, the supreme refuge that show us, and they show us the path. Because these teachings were taught and shared with us by the Buddha, for that reason, by virtue of that, then the Buddha we regard as being most supreme, as being the unsurpassable, peerless teacher.
Tene jigdinji kamtela damba sanji shebati jigungotu dawdi 상계백이 ngorchaba mares tembe chue sune chue digi ani roa mangbochila ngonto tangele ki lam dupala penta yundi chue degi de temba ngorcha songares temba second kadin chuma temba khorang ki ngone temba kera chuma chawa mares temba de garjin kera chuma charasna chue sune kera chuma chagres ta zodi temba la ngorcha jugenda ngarang zolo ngosu kaptu ngazola
The teacher, namely the precious Buddha, hasn't become revered and renowned throughout the world because of his persona per se. Rather, it's because of what he shared, what he gave to others, which was his teachings, the precious Dharma, which is the peerless, most supreme protection. It's because of what he shared, the value of his teaching, that he in turn has become revered and renowned. We can see this, and we can see this at play if we look at Buddha's life story, right? In the early part of Buddha's life, so before he reached enlightenment, he wasn't well known particularly or especially revered as a person. It was after attaining enlightenment and when he started to teach that he became revered, right? So, and today Rinpoche was talking about the Buddha's teaching, the precious Dharma, and highlighting the very basis, the very fundamental basis of the teachings, namely adopting the 10 virtues and avoiding the 10 non-virtues. So this is really like the very kind of minimum requirement, so to speak, at the same time the basic foundation of the Dharma.
Teni chue segin tela yang ta twenda tap deushina ni do shungda ngoma chitang tsumach ni yongures.
When we talk about Dharma, or we could say just which we could just in this case say like anything, there's the true aspect of it and a false aspect of it. Or rather, there are true things and false things. If there were only true things, we wouldn't really be able to recognize them as such. When we place something that's true side by side with something that is false, then because of the contrast, we can recognize the truth of that thing, right? In comparison to the false thing.
Pena kiranzogi nangmi yabu jinala deyundi nangmi degi kadin tang dinishira tengi mares. Nangmi ne chilo dona o the nangmi de kadin chimbo yimba tengi res beten hasires.
So if you're from a very loving family and you grow up in that way, you probably aren't very aware of the virtues of your family. But if then you leave your family, go out into the wider world, then you will become aware of how loving your family is and be able to appreciate that.
Di chögi neluk segente yoderes di yobade nganzogi ngoshe tuge mar chesan ta tembagi ngaranzogi nong dewa zumba yimba kharidila chulde du sedikaso te metapala takparsung ani midewala tungalwala dewasung dewadi nor dewadi töyungdu te neluk ngomade tongela pejoyungures.
We are not, the nature of things, the true nature, authentic nature of things is present, always, it's right there, but we're not able to recognize it, even though it is ever present. We cognize things in an incorrect, distorted way. And it's Buddha who points out our mistakes to us and offers us the chance to kind of remedy or correct our perception, our understanding of things. We perceive what's permanent, what's impermanent as permanent, what is unclean as clean, and so on. So Buddha, seeing these mistakes, these basic mistakes we make with our mode of perception, he then taught things like things are not permanent, they are impermanent, things are not clean, they are impure, and so on. That's the benefit of the teachings. It points out to us that our perception is mistaken and how to correct it.
Tene tanda tomba sanje kyang chögi kholo nane thangbo demba shi chögi kholo sung nambare and demba shi nane ta thangbo tene midapa ne utsamde tene chögi kholo kor nambare.
When Buddha first began to teach, he began with the teaching of the Four Truths of Noble Ones, or the Four Noble Truths. And the Four Truths of Noble Ones begins with the principle of impermanence. So that's where he began his teachings.
Teni ngaran sogi midaba de la samlo yayang tang songana ta thekar langa jo takjin daw dang ta che dinang gi gyunring bo samlo ti thong chage res.
When we hear about impermanence and we think about it through Buddha's teachings, then the result is that it reduces our grasping, our perception of things as being impermanent and lasting. It reduces our, it kind of remedies our perception, our presumption that things are going to last forever.
Teni di chenyungde che dinangi shemba de chungru chana an chö yabo chetu res.
And in this way, when our attachment to the appearances, the experiences of this life are reduced, when the attachments to this fleeting life are reduced, then the possibilities for us to practice Dharma, to apply ourselves to the Dharma, increase.
Tene ngaran jo samle apo tangda ngaran jo ge sem gi zimba de ane yunringbo jidan tembo jidan takpa daw jila sem chagre gi duzo tungdung yunringbo medege shik chokjo jila sem chagre nganjo sem lawo tangda khawala sem chagre zimba de.
We should examine our own grasping, our own fixation. So does our mind get attached and fixated on things that are fleeting, that are shifting, that are constantly changing? Or does the mind get attached to things that seem lasting, stable, permanent?
Tadi lendi le labora ngajo chasang thakbo jikta yurungbo tembo jila ngajo gagre sem jingirwa.
The answer is easy, right? We all get attached to things that we think that seem lasting, firm, stable.
두zu 통동 la jigdo gen jikta 두zu 통동 la meba chagen de ngajo sem shira lo tegi marwa.
We don't really focus or invest ourselves in things that are just very short-lived, that it kind of fall apart immediately, that that dissipate immediately. Things like that, things that are so transient, so fleeting, we can let go of them easily, right? We just let them be.
탐제 미다바 인디 데니 르모체기 디강라 두 남야 딱베 고가 메 세겐기 ngodo 비릭바 셰인디 땅도 탐제 라 짐바시타 슈게 메레 가르스나데 직도의 랑신 예도의 랑신 진짜 차기레스.
So our teacher, the Buddha, he pointed out that everything, the entire world, the external environment, as well as all sentient beings and everything else within this environment are all impermanent. Everything, the world and beings are impermanent. As Rinpoche said this morning, when explaining this in terms of logical reasoning, everything is impermanent because no single phenomena has a chance to remain in a permanent state ever. That's not a very eloquent translation, but everything, whatever it is constantly in a state of change, flux, deterioration.
다 르모치 소원나 신기다 나란쪽에 미다바 임바디 셰디 차상게 렐라고 시그레 송사.
As Rinpoche said, just like the basic fact that everything's impermanent, it's very easy to understand, right? We can all get that.
다 미다바 임발라 임바시네 곰겐디 다 뇽뇽지레. 데 마검나 시라 펜토고요 말레스.
That said, it's quite rare to find someone who does really take impermanence to heart and meditates on it and internalizes that truth, so to speak. So we all can understand it, but who can really take it to heart?
티인디 다 미다발랑한 저기 당보 퇴고래. 제가 삼로 땅고래. 제가 검고래. 저선 검중 고래서 미다고 찍거나.
And if we don't really take the fact of impermanence to heart, there's not going to be much benefit in just knowing about it. So this is why we need to study, to contemplate, and to meditate on the teachings, right? So we need to learn about impermanence, contemplate it, and then meditate on it, internalize it.
티인디다 라메 맹아다. 라메기 꿀마체네 미다바 겁나. 데 펜도 전부 요래.
This being the case, it's extremely beneficial if we can receive the pith instructions from the Guru about how to go about this, about how to meditate upon impermanence. If we can receive those pith instructions from the Guru and then actually apply them, there'll be enormous benefit to that.
미다바 검숭에디 태가라 쉬나 땅아저 제금 차게레스.
When we talk about meditating on impermanence, we're really talking, when we say meditation in this case, we're talking about analytical meditation, a process of focused examination.
되니 다 미다바 망부 검나를 무슨다 셈랑신기 시와 차그레 송소아.
If we meditate in this way on impermanence a great deal, then what will happen is that our minds will become very tranquil, very at peace, just as Rinpoche mentioned this morning, right?
미다바 건배기 시랍되기 아니 남윤기 짐바 탐지 슬기는도 그래서 착신 탐지.
The insight that we will have, if we meditate in this way, we cultivate an insight into impermanence, and that insight will pierce and break through all of our ordinary mundane grasping that fixates on things as being permanent and lasting.
미다바 건배기 시랍 똑단된바 되기 때 남윤기 가라도 셈나라 짐바단 착신 깨나양 라우르도 미다바 건배기 똑되기 슬기는네 람사 르땅투와 짐바 마체바기 아니 고바 개버지는 거레스.
So once we've developed this insight into impermanence, by virtue of the power of that insight, even if occasionally, even if something triggers attachment to anything, and a fixation on something being permanent arises again, by with the power of insight, we'll be able to kind of overcome that fixation. It's not going to linger. The attachment can arise, but then with the insight into impermanence, we'll be able to overcome and oppress that attachment and just release the object of attachment and return to a state of calm.
다 미탁바 세겐디 덴바레 줌바레스는 유로아징이랑 신 줌바레라고 하죠.
When we say impermanent, we mean changeable, influx, not lasting. So essentially false, right? Because it's changeable.
다 미탁바데 가리레라 되거든 진앙기 최탐제 미탁바레스라고.
What is impermanent? All appearing phenomena are impermanent. All externally appearing phenomena are impermanent.
다 디조 차상 줌바레도 간저기 로 이체 깔나 깔 뉴사민도 와디잖아. 디조랑 간저 로테 뉴사민도 와.
All of these things are impermanent. All these things we perceive are impermanent. That being the case, they're not reliable. They're not worthy of our investment or our trust.
데니타 로테도 룽와당 유로아 메바데 가르레스는 데니타 춘이강 연구레스타 텔라 미타베 톱기 준베기 낭와데 모신디 양닥바 된담바 텔라 로 녀루도와 디 짤레기 쪼와 준주디게 연구레스.
What is worthy of our trust? What's worthy of our investment and trust? What is unchanging? Well, that's the true nature of things, the intrinsic nature or dhammata. When we meditate on impermanence, we gain insight into impermanence. We'll recognize the falsity of appearing phenomena. We'll recognize these phenomena for what they are, namely impermanent, changeable, false appearances. And as a result, in contrast, we'll come to realize the value of the Dharma, the unchanging nature of things, and gain even more interest, more trust in that state.
세상다 유로아징기 랑신기 최레레 네모시 영성하나 다디로 때도 미룬와 이된도 미룬의 최레도 슬라도 하고나 로때도 룸위기다 춘이디 가르리도 짤용도 되니 된다며 템발라나디도 동신 담에 발라나디 모살도 약도 천용도 되니 메타베 톱이 춘이 통생인데 연구요래스다 주마당 뭐만 냠도 셔데 주마탐제 카산네 뭐만 장마 뭐시 지다 고갑도 뚜 연구라.
So when we recognize things to be impermanent, we recognize, come to know impermanent things to be impermanent and changeable. We come to recognize that they're not actually stable, not trustworthy, not worthy of investment. Then we turn our interest, we lose interest in those things, we turn away from them, and then we will naturally seek out the opposite. Okay, so what is worthy of trust? What is lasting and stable? And in that way, we will discover the true nature of things, dharmata, the intrinsic nature. It's in this way that because of this process, by virtue of this process, that it's said through meditating on impermanence, emptiness can be realized. Because when you recognize impermanence, namely that which is false and changeable, that recognition leads you to a search for what is lasting and trustworthy, and that leads you then to emptiness, to dharmata, the intrinsic nature.
린포체기 소엔디 다 당니 다기 고양이 소엔디 덤바 산제기 까지기 다 롱디 마 당샤바라라 땡가란조 남바 산제베기 최나라 아니 최디 랑랑 소소기 두고야디 퇴섬 검숨디 랑니 소소기 제고야디 살부 숨고거래.
Rinpoche also quoted a verse from the scripture, a verse that Buddha spoken by Buddha himself, the lines beginning, "You are your own guide, you are your own protector," and so on. What these lines are saying, what the intention of them is to point out that we need to practice ourselves. Practice and application depends on ourselves. So we need to actually take the initiative and study, in contemplation, in meditation. That's something we have to do for ourselves.
Tene Rinpoche Tiring Shopasona Shire, Naranjoki Semla, Namdo that Tanka Mambu Shidarawala. The Namdogi Zawa the two Dordina, Chashini the Chagure, Sumuda, the Chashin the Zoma, Tagar, Meversuela, Nyemboti, Tenijing and to Chakwa Shembaches at the Tapajila down, Yura Mevachila Sundura, the Midaba in Bagmotosona, the Chashi Rangshi, the Chung Chartores.
Also this morning, Rinpoche discussed how we have so many different kinds of thoughts, so many different kinds of concepts and thoughts, but the root and wellspring of all of them essentially are the two main afflictions, attachment and aversion. These two. What did these two main afflictions rest upon? They rest upon this mistaken presumption of permanence, right? Things being permanent and lasting. This being the case, when we meditate, when we contemplate and meditate on impermanence, the more we come to understand about impermanence, then the less we'll perceive things, grasp at things as being permanent, and that then undermines attachment and aversion. When attachment and aversion are undermined, then all of the other thoughts and afflictions that stem from attachment and aversion will naturally subside.
Tene Rinpoche Menga Kitsuldu, Tik Dindish Tapar Sungre, Nuju Mitatu Sheshin, Shenchaki, Tiwadima, Yungam, Yukture Sungtu.
Then Rinpoche mentioned two lines of pith instruction, lines of instruction that he frequently mentions in teachings. Recognize the world and everything in it to be impermanent, and then the entanglement of attachment and aversion will unravel.
Takeza Dordunishena, Naranzola, Semla, Tengu, Nuna, Kibuyore, Lager.
In short, if we really, in short, we can simply say that if we reduce our thoughts, we're going to have more happiness. If our mind is filled with thoughts and our mind is very complicated, we really have very little happiness, very little sense of ease.
Tungen Tanda Yaga, the Noma Midis, Tungen Yungar, then Sambatos Kiba Yosares, the Karisnadi, Chingobodi, Yargeshira made you similar Tengu Yungura.
Modern scientists recognize this as well, right? They understand and talk about how they've observed that modern people have more thoughts, much busier minds than people in the past. So even though externally our circumstances in the modern age have improved, life is more comfortable, that comfort has increased our thoughts, increased our mental activity, which has actually reduced our happiness. In comparison to people who lived in the past in much simpler circumstances, less comfort, but as a result, less mental activity and busyness and more happiness.
Chesa Rinpoche Tapara Sungre, Yobadilla Chokyi, Mangru Tanga, Tantic Samla Shira Matangs, Mitaba comes, Samba Kibu Yungres, Samba Flip to Sungu.
Rinpoche always says this, right? He always emphasizes this point and says that we should be content with what we have. Be content with what you have, appreciate what you have. Don't try and increase your belongings and so on. Instead, contemplate impermanence, meditate on impermanence. And with this mindset and approach, you'll gain some mental peace and a sense of ease and happiness.
That Mitaba comes on Jegum Chesona, similar Tengu Nurugres, Samba Flipagres, that Tengu Mountain at the Nyima Kabura.
So if we meditate on impermanence, and when we say meditate on impermanence, in this case we mean like a focused analysis, right? Focused examination of impermanence. If we do that, then our mental activity, discursive thoughts, will decrease. and a sense of ease and happiness will increase. If our mind is full of thoughts, we can't stop thinking. That prevents us from even getting a good night of sleep, right? We need to arrive at a state where our mind is at ease and relaxed, right? That's a big kind of basic mental state we need to cultivate. Our mind is at ease and relaxed. Without that, we won't be able to practice the Dharma well.
대간난싱 다른 버치기 체릭반냠도 저들체네 체릭받은 저기양 뇌주 미다도 임바 케링기도 디네콜라 체릭받고라 까메 가르친 순거를 남나 다 댕상기 뒤즈 뒤럽 예직 받텔라 미나네 샤랍 체셔 딩한테 체릭받지기랑 하는 저기 디인다 미나네 리파 장슈 삼도 땅 케셔 딘 저기 케렌소나 땅 안저자 케링기 메슨 랍사면도아 순거를 던달라.
Rinpoche also this morning talked quite a bit about, he recounted his discussions with this group of scientists, right? So why was Rinpoche telling us about scientists, this specific conversation he had with scientists? Well, it's because these days in the 21st century, scientists are generally regarded as kind of the brightest, most insightful group of people, right? If the scientists say that this is the case, generally people believe them more than, we place more kind of value in a scientist's belief than in other people's. So when this is why Rinpoche was sharing his interaction with us, because of the kind of modern mindset. We can think, okay, if these scientists, these top scientists accept these tenets of Buddha's teaching, then okay, they really must be valid, Buddha's teaching really must be valid and true. That was why.
다 미탁바 시에발레 학소시 다 조데 다 르무치기 곰고레 숭우다 다디 갈침부 찍고레 미탁바디 나란 저기 락베 미탁바디 야부시기데 다 타베 미탁바디야 다 삼로동 땅네 두즈토스테나 다 마시바야 말에디 지당 이셰자지라 하고 이기 취지라 시기데 다 고메디 다 갈치쇼 낭바 산지비 투몽 많이 바디 미탁바 고메디레스.
Primarily Rinpoche was talking about impermanence though, right? And the importance and value of meditating on impermanence. So first of all, we need to understand impermanence, we need to learn about it, but that's not so difficult. We can't just leave it there though, we need to actually practice impermanence, right? Meditate on it, internalize it. There are coarse kind of levels of impermanence and there are much more subtle levels or aspects of impermanence. To understand the more subtle levels of impermanence, you need to spend longer on contemplating and study and so on. But they're not so abstract. These subtler levels can be understood, can be accessed if you give the time. But knowledge is only the benefits of knowledge are always limited, and one of the most special and unique qualities of Buddha's teachings across the board is this emphasis on meditation, right? On internalizing, bringing into one's experience the various principles that are taught. So in this case, the same goes with impermanence. More important than understanding impermanence intellectually, we need to actually internalize that, practice it.
메탁바레도 강라 닝보 민도 삼고디네 셈 기타 켈서지 고거래.
In short, we need to generate an outlook that rests on understanding of impermanence. So to basically view life through the lens of impermanence, and understand that see everything through the lens of impermanence, and to understand that it is fleeting and transient, without essence.
Teni 미답에 최대라 착신 지나야 닝보민도 미답에 최대라 콩도 지나야 닝보민도 미답에 최대라 탁도 지나야 닝보민도 삼고르더니 샘디랑 신기 독숨 칸는지 차게래스 미답은 것이베 또.
We need to think to ourselves, all of these things, all phenomena are impermanent. what use is there being attached and fixated upon something that's impermanent, that's going to change? What use is there to getting angry at something that's impermanent and is going to change? What use is there in being jealous or competitive to something impermanent that's going to change? There's no benefit to that. So this is the way that we need to kind of talk to ourselves and relate with our experience. And if we do this, the result will be that our afflictions, our negative emotions, will naturally decrease. Through the power of impermanence, or the force of impermanence, we can come to know the nature of all relative phenomena. We know that the relative and in that way we come to understand that our relative phenomena are limited. Relative phenomena are not something that we can to be accomplished, or the relative phenomena are limited. So then we turn to ultimate phenomena, ultimate lasting phenomena. And that is to say, emptiness and selflessness. This is dharmata, the intrinsic nature, nirvana, the state of peace, which is untroubled, unmoved by the waves of the afflictions. So in these four truths, these four statements, what is true and what is false is very clearly distinguished for us. If we remain deluded and caught up in that which is false, we'll just continue to experience suffering. If we recognize what is false as false, and then we turn to what is true, then we can gain freedom from the battering waves of the afflictions. So Rinpoche will no doubt continue to teach on these profound topics today and in the coming days. So all of you, please listen very attentively, take to heart what Rinpoche teaches. And in these revision sessions that we'll have in the coming days, and I'll continue to share what I've understood of Rinpoche's teaching. So the session today is finished, so we'll leave it here for today.